Hello, I'm Wally Wood, welcoming you to another edition of the Revelation File. In the midst of this coronavirus syndrome and this epidemic that's sweeping the world, there are changes that are happening that are going to remain from this point forward. Those of you who've been watching us from the very beginning, you may recall that back in January, we had a program. I put together a program in which we were addressing this particular century that we're in, and this particular decade of that century. And as we crossed over 2020, I called it the 3D decade. The decade of darkness, the decade of decision, and the decade of declaration. The darkness and the decision portion has to do with the world itself. As the Lord prepares the earth to receive the second coming of Christ. And Jesus told it in his prophetic discourse that there were things that were going to happen that had never happened before in the days of his return. It would be a one-time event. And so we addressed the coming darkness. And at this particular point in this year, we're there. We're just on the threshold of what's coming. And it will never go back to normal as we understood it and knew it to be before this year started. And the decade of decision, global leaders are going to finally come to grips with the fact that they cannot rule the world, their nations, without assistance. This will go beyond global institutions. They're looking for a leader. And they're looking for a man that they can come to and can depend upon and trust. And he is what the Bible prophesies as being the Antichrist. When this man shows up, remember, Antichrist is pre-Christ. And he is going to take the reins of a world that's full of chaos everywhere, from the streets to the voters to the halls of politics. Everything is turning inside out and upside down. And they will cast their national sovereignties as nations at his feet. So this is where we're headed. And on today's program, we're in a different studio now, back in the original studio when we first started this series of programs a couple of years ago. And we're going to show you a multimedia presentation that I've put together having to do with the impact that the coronavirus is now having upon the economy to such a degree that the decision will be made across the board to go totally cashless. Let's open with our first slide. Coronavirus creates cashless conditions. Major media brings focus to the new reality. And here you have a sampling of the media sources that I've gone to find stories on this particular matter having to do with going cashless in the coronavirus era. We've got reports from Boston Herald, Euromoney, CNBC, CNN Business, Forbes, Legal Executive Institute, Times Union, the FinTech Times, CBS News, and MSN. And this is just a small sampling of those sources that we've tapped into that are addressing the fact that now we are turning a major turning point where cash will be done away with because of the virus and replaced with digital currency. It's quicker, it's cleaner. So let's go into our report so that you can see what these major sources are saying. Okay, from the Boston Herald, May 9th, 2020, coronavirus speeds up the move to cashless society. Quoting, sheltering at home means more purchases are being done over the internet. The move away from legal tender was well on its way pre-virus. Some stores and eateries had stopped accepting cash altogether. COVID-19 has accelerated this process for several reasons. Cash cannot change hands at a distance of 6 feet. And besides, who wants to grab that dirty bill? And I'll say more about this in just a little bit. Euro money, cashless after COVID-19. The number of cashless transactions is rising as the coronavirus pandemic limits the rise or the use of physical cash. When the World Health Organization released a statement on March 9th, recommending that people turn to cashless transactions to fight the spread of COVID-19, a number of governments and retailers across the world took action. And this report takes you into those areas of the world where action has been taken to clean the cash, to radiate the cash, but that's becoming a costly process. And now the process has begun to officially replace those nations' currency with a cryptocurrency, a digital currency. Moving on to our next report from the Legal Executive Institute. They published on April 20th of this year. Will COVID-19 make cash obsolete? Is the COVID-19 pandemic more quickly moving the world to a cashless society, one where almost all financial transactions are not conducted with physical banknotes or coins, but rather through the transfer of digital information via a smartphone? And this is a trend that we've been reporting on in this ministry for many, many years. For those of you who may be new and don't know, I wrote my first book in 1972 entitled Cashless Society, A World Without Money. It had less than 50 pages in it, and it addressed the fact that there was coming one day a central computer system that would oversee every financial transaction, from the gas pump to the Coke machine to the checkout counter, and you would not have need of changing cash at all, just a card with a personal number. Now, keep in mind, this was in 1972. The internet did not exist at that time. About 10 years later, it would make its public debut. But in 72, it didn't exist. So I called it CENTCOM, for Central Computer. And I talked about how this computer would oversee every financial transaction. And look where we are today, in the year 2020. We're there. From Forbes magazine, coronavirus stimulus offered by House Financial Services Committee creates a new digital dollar. Now pay attention, because the United States is leading the way in this new development. Quoting, as the markets continue to drop, the newest offer by House Democrats includes a very forward-looking kind of stimulus, the creation of a digital dollar, and the establishment of digital dollar wallets. In what will send shockwaves through the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry, particularly for those following central bank digital currencies around the world, this signals the U.S. is serious in establishing infrastructure for a central bank digital currency, otherwise known as a CBDC. Continuing to quote, Speaker Pelosi's Take Responsibility for Workers and Families Act, known as H.R. 6321, featured on the right side of the screen, introduced these concepts as a way of delivering the economic stimulus payments to U.S. citizens. The bill establishes a digital dollar, which it defines as a balance expressed as a dollar value consisting of digital ledger entries that are recorded in the accounts of any Federal Reserve Bank or an electronic unit of value. In other words, in short, it's similar to what Europe has been using for a long time, known as the Special Drawing Right, or SDR. Continuing our quote, additionally, a digital dollar wallet is identified as a digital wallet or account maintained by a Federal Reserve Bank on behalf of any person that represents holdings in an electronic device or service that is used to store digital dollars that may be tied to a digital or physical identity. End of quote. Now on the right, we've gone to page 4 of this 120-page bill that Pelosi has introduced, and I've highlighted the references to a digital dollar on that page in the bill. And they talk very openly about developing and merging into this digital dollar system as a result of COVID. From CNN Business, dirty money, the case against using cash during the coronavirus outbreak. The ongoing spread of coronavirus is forcing institutions around the world to rethink one particularly germy surface that most consumers touch every day: cash. On Friday, South Korea's central bank said it was taking all banknotes out of circulation for 2 weeks and burning some to reduce the spread of the virus, according to Reuters. It follows China's massive initiative around deep cleaning potentially infected cash with ultraviolet light and high temperatures, and in some cases destroying it. The treated cash comes from high-risk infection areas such as hospitals. The Chinese were the first to start this, and as they began to call back all their currency that was out there, they washed it, they cleaned it, they laundered it, if you will, and applied radiation, lighting, to further clean it. As they began to get what they felt or reported to be positive impact on this, other nations followed suit. As I said at the outset, now they're being able to realize that it's too costly a process and too slow a process to be viable and effective. And that's where cryptocurrency comes in. It's germ-free, and all that remains to be done now is to take it away from the plastic card and even the physical terminal that you find at the stores, and applying it all into mobile technology, mobile units like your phone and things of this nature. And so that's the next evolutionary stage. The next, continuing quote from CNN Business, the concerns over cash come as the global number of people infected by the coronavirus grows. The outbreak may just drive up adoption of mobile payments, a newer technology that has long trailed behind cash in the U.S. There is no doubt we pass microorganisms through cash, says Paul Matterwheel, a senior lecturer in microbiology at London Metropolitan University, as he was speaking to CNN Business. Quoting again, studies show a number of things we would never have thought would be present, end of quote. And indeed, this whole thing has caught the world off guard. So they don't know how to combat it. And this is one of those areas that they're looking deeply into. I have my own network of news outlets online. I've got 5 websites and a little over 20 social page sites, as we're showing here on this particular screen now, that we're calling the Wood News Group. And you'll find me on Facebook on a number of different pages: Cashless Society, Diginomics Central on LinkedIn, and Diginomics Defined on Facebook, the Revelation File on Facebook, Diginomic World Blog on Facebook, and Diginomic World News on LinkedIn. We also have Twitter pages. And like I said, we've got about 20 outlets that I implant news and commentary, as you are accustomed to on the Revelation File. And I bring that to your attention, and you can go to wallywoodministries.com and find the links there to this growing network. But a particular report that I filed on May 12th has to do with this idea of COVID-19 bringing digital dollar closer to reality. I opened by telling a story of a grocery clerk patron who brings a canned drink to the checkout and insists that the checker not touch the can because, as the shopper says, "I don't know where your hands have been." So the checker allows the customer to scan the item himself. The shopper then swipes his debit card, requesting cash back. As the checker counts the cash to the shopper, he says, 1 cocaine, 2 cocaine, 3 cocaine. The stunned shopper says, "What are you doing?" And the checker simply tells him, "I'm telling you where my hands have been all day." handling cash. And the shopper looked stunned as he walked out the door. Now, this is a true story, okay? But I use this as the opening to this article from Card Not Present site, talking about how coronavirus is indeed leading the pack in seeing to it that the whole world goes cashless because of our infected bills, okay? Consumers turning to digital wallets, the report goes on to say. And in this report, they cite a survey that was done in 2017 at, I believe it was New York University, in which it was found that over 80% of our cash has got cocaine on it. And an equally high percentage of coins have not only cocaine, but other illicit drugs found in evidence on the coins and the cash. So that's what this checker was telling the shopper, is that you're worried about where my hands have been in the arena of infecting your can. But what you're handling now is the dirtiest commodity in the world. The book, The End of Money, from an acquaintance of mine named David Woolman. He is a contributing editor to Wired magazine, and he's written rather exclusively and extensively on this concept of the death of money as it approaches its Waterloo Day, if you will. And his book came out in 2012, and in there he says, economists understand that money is fiction and that the entire financial system rests on the head of this socially constructed pen. Money's destiny is to become digital. A progressive move away from cash could hold many benefits. The barriers to going with digital money across the board are coming down. He goes on to say in Wired magazine in June 2009, in an era when books, movies, music, and newsprint are transforming from atoms to bits, money remains irritatingly analog. Physical currency is a bulky, germ-smeared, carbon-intensive, expensive medium of exchange. Let's dump it. Over the years, I've gathered a lot of information from many writers, authors, reporters, journalists on the demise of currency. If you go back in our archives, you'll find that I've got a number of shows on this. And going forward, we'll continue to report on this again and again. And I'll even take you back to some of the earlier writings on this matter. Like I said, my book came out in 1972. And we knew that this trend was moving forward. What we didn't see, because we see through a glass darkly, is what it would take to finally push it into the public arena and bypassing all the politics and the economics and the theories and things of this nature, take it out of philosophy and put it into the real world. What was it going to take for the world to get rid of its cash and move into an all-digital, cashless system? Now, I'll bring your attention to the one book that has always talked about this, and that's the Bible. There's only one book in all the world that has a 100% accurate record in predicting world events before they occur. Prophecy demands an answer, and the Bible has never been wrong, ever. There are 109 prophecies in the Old Testament of Jesus' first coming. There are 329 prophecies in the entire Bible of his second coming. And in the book of Revelation, the last book of the New Testament, it talks about a cashless, moneyless system. In the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, we read of an empire and a leader of that empire and how his administration will make it forcible that you would not be able to buy or sell, you would not be able to work or shop without a number being placed in your flesh. And it goes so far as to say that that number is 666. But the emphasis here is that it mentions not the word cashless, but the scenario of cashless. You would not be able to work or shop without the number. And it suggests a moneyless system. Because in a system that is focused strictly on a digitized network, what good is the money? We are fast moving from the tangible into the intangible. And it's taking this global crisis to make that viable. I don't number myself among those who are spending a lot of time and energy trying to look for the boogeyman behind the coronavirus. Who's behind it? Who started it? Was it really started in Wuhan, China? Or was there something else going on? I don't involve myself in that. I've done my research as a journalist into the powers that be, and I've got a history in which I've spoken about those things, but always from the context of end-time Bible prophecy, never for the purpose of politics, not for the purpose of fame. And I've just felt this obligation to ready the body of Christ for the change that the Bible said was coming. And now we're in that day. You're going to see, and again, so much of the conspiracy pursuits, are the numbers real? Are they accurate? Are there really that many people dying from the virus and all this other stuff? I'm not one who gives himself to scandal. I don't spew slander. I don't expose people for this, that, or the other. There's enough research out there today that was available before the internet that reveals what's really going on. And as a news journalist with an interest in end-time Bible prophecy, that has been the dictate of my career and the course of my path. I've spent over 20 years as a news journalist working in NASA. I even had an organization for about 10 years for the program of space. But it's all been with this understanding that we were moving in a global direction where nations would come together, united, under one flag, one cause, one constitution, spoken of in Daniel chapter 2. Jesus made reference to it, and all the other prophets did too. That in the days immediately preceding Jesus' return, the day of the Lord, the old prophets used to call it, there was coming one final empire with a global leader. And that's what the Revelation File has been about since 1981 when I first started it. I'd started the Christian News Network over radio at that time, and I was working as a news director for a local radio station that was a Christian radio station at the time. And we brought on board news journalists and news directors, reporters who were Christian, reporting world news from a Christian perspective. And this was a concept that nobody had even thought of before, and we were pioneering it. So, having gone back that far in my career as a newsman, and moving forward through these decades, and now seeing this global pandemic at a level that no one ever anticipated. Nobody saw this coming. We know that this too is part of what Jesus prophesied. He spoke of global plagues and everything else of this nature. Matthew 25, Luke 21, Mark 11. And now the question is, what do we do? Do we shake our hands? Do we get anxious? Do we join in some protest? Now, I'm speaking specifically to the body of Christ. Those who are outside the body of Christ, they're going to do whatever seems right to them to do, wherever their passions take them. But I'm addressing the body of Christ. This is the time when the church at large will rise up. Those who know their God will rise up. This is not a bad message. This is not a negative message. This is a preparatory message. This is a message that is intended to awaken us to the times and to the mission of the body of Christ as the world is being prepared to receive its King. And those who know their God, who know the Word, know the times, know what to expect, they will not be shaken by any of this. Their faith, their trust, their hope, their reliance is directly in Him and His promises. And so that's why I put these programs together. I want to educate you and inform you of the lateness of the hour and the calling of the ministry of the church to be most like Jesus at this time like never before. We will continue to address these things. I thank the Lord for this open door. I thank you for your faithfulness in watching these programs. Write to us. Let us know your impressions and the impact that these shows are having. And we will be back for another program here very soon. I'm Wally Wood, and I thank you for watching.
You have been watching the Revelation File Report with Wally Wood, a Wally Wood Ministries production from Houston, Texas. You are able to support the ministry by donating at wallywoodministries.com and by mail at Wally Wood Ministries, P.O. Box 42005, Houston, Texas 77242. Wally is available to present full 2-hour forums in your city called the Revelation File News Forum. For more details, contact Andy Valadez at 713-560-3348 or by email at andy@andyvaladez.com. The Revelation File News Report is a weekly update of global trends in the news as it aligns with end-time Bible prophecy. Tune in again next time and be sure to like and share this channel.